Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Andrea and I like to talk about anything related to travel, specifically budget travel or random entertainment things. Kind of a little bit of lifestyle too, but this video is about tips for visiting Japan for first-timers. I went there last February for the first time and I feel like I have some, tips that I can share with anyone visiting Japan for the first time. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and thank you for watching. I will just get right into it. I'm not really going to talk about where you should visit in Japan or how to find cheap flights because I feel like that's all relative to your personal taste and where you're flying out of, and it's kind of hard to give tips on that. So I'll just say visit wherever you feel like you're drawn to and what's convenient for you, and just research that. But where to stay, I recommend staying by a train station that you're going to be using. That's just because you are going to probably have luggage that you're going to be dragging around the streets, and it's kind of annoying having to drag it really far. And this tip really goes for traveling anywhere in any city. I like to stay close to train stations so I don't have to drag my suitcase a half hour. Recently I went to Florence and our hotel was literally a half-hour walk from the train station that we came from, and it was on huge cobblestone, so it was really insane just having to drag suitcases through that. So I recommend just doing a little research and figuring out what trains you're going to be using and where a convenient place to stay is. I stayed in a few APA hotels, which are pretty nice and affordable, but they're also really tiny. But I feel like they're a good option if you don't have a big family or there's just one or two of you. And then another thing to look out for when you're booking hotels, aside from free cancellation, which I pretty much always only book hotels that have cancellation, but also luggage storage and a private bathroom, because depending on where you are, not all hotels will have a private bathroom, and that's just something that I always look for. And then for trains, some of the research that I was doing recommends getting a JR pass, and I think the price of that recently went up and it's pretty expensive. It's probably not worth it for you to get one if you're only going to Japan for a little while and not taking a lot of trains. So I suggest calculating if that's actually worth it for you financially. It wasn't for me. And then in terms of getting around cities and using public transportation, buses, subways, and all of that stuff, you can download the Suica app, which is the Suica card mobile version. And there are other versions of this, but I used Suica, so I'm specifically talking about that one. I'm pretty sure that the Suica card app only works with MasterCard and American Express cards, so make sure you look into that and have one of those cards if you're planning to use it. When you're using trains there, you tap in and out, and if you don't do that, it makes a loud noise at you. And when you are coming from a train, for example, when we came into Tokyo, we took the Narita Express, which we had a paper ticket for. So when you go through, you use the paper ticket, and then when you exit at the train station, you put the paper ticket in to go into the next train station, which is something that's kind of confusing, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, and I didn't realize it, and I had to get help the first time I did it. And then after that, you would just tap your Suica card to get out after you take the subway from there. So you always have to scan your ticket in and out, and if you have a paper ticket, you just put it in when you exit and when you enter. When you're booking tickets on the Shinkansen train, which is the high-speed bullet train, we took it, how many times? 2, I think. 2 or 3 times. You can book those reservations in advance, or you can just go the day of and just buy a ticket at the ticket machine. I think I bought mine at least 1 or 2 days in advance every time. Whenever I would get into a place and I was at the train station, I would just buy a ticket for like a few days from then, just to make sure I had the right time that I wanted and it wasn't booked up. And the way that I bought my ticket, which I found to be easiest, was just going to the ticket counter and actually like asking for assistance from the employees. There are like the machines that you can use, but I just found it to be kind of confusing. And I think it's helpful if you're actually like speaking to someone. So there are ticket counters right by where you would enter the train in the train stations that you can just like buy it in person. And then another thing to keep in mind is if you do have a reservation and you miss your train, it's not a big deal. You don't have to like pay for another train. You can just take the next train that you want to take. You just won't have a seat reservation. And I did have that happen one time. It wasn't really that big of a deal. We didn't get there early enough, so we didn't know exactly where to go. So make sure you get to the train stations early enough to like figure out exactly where to go. And if you're going from Tokyo to Kyoto on the bullet train, if you sit on the right side of the train, you'll be able to see Mount Fuji. I'm not sure about the way back because I don't know if it's on like the same track. It might be on the left side on the way back, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to tell you that. I think as a tourist, I would recommend trying to avoid the subways during like peak hours, during rush hour, just because they get super packed. Not all of them get really packed, but some of them do get really, really packed, and it's basically like really overwhelming where like you have no room to move and you're basically just like squished in like a bunch of sardines. So just try to avoid peak hours if you can. And then something else which you've probably heard if you're going to Japan, I'm sure you've done other research, but Japanese people are normally pretty quiet on public transportation, and it's considered rude if you're speaking loudly, so just try to keep your voice down or just like don't talk at all. Don't listen to any music, use headphones if you are. I just wanted to mention a few things about going to Disneyland because I did go there, and I also have like a personal goal of going to all the Disney parks around the world. When we got there right like maybe 15 minutes before they opened, and the line was super duper long. Like we had to wait for over an hour after the park opened to actually get into the park, so we lost an hour, at least an hour of our time in the park. It took a really long time to get people through the gates, which is something I've never experienced at other Disney parks. Normally you get there a little early and then you get in like right as the park's opening, but I don't know why it just took forever to get in. So if you want to get in right when they open, I suggest getting there like an hour early. If you want to visit Disney but you don't want to commit to like a full day of your trip, they have like a half-priced evening ticket that you can get, which we did use that for Disneyland in the evening, and then we went to Tokyo Sea for like most of the day. But if you just want to like go see what the park's like and maybe go on a few rides, you can do the evening ticket. And something else to keep in mind is merch in Disneyland in Tokyo is super affordable. It's probably like 50% at least cheaper than the parks in the US, so I wouldn't pack any ears or anything. I would just plan on buying some if you are planning to wear ears, because you're probably going to want to buy some. Okay, and then I want to talk about cash and having cash on hand. So we did withdraw some cash at an ATM in, where was it? I don't know, it was just a random ATM on the street, I think. You don't absolutely have to have cash when you go to Japan, but you will need cash for visiting maybe some restaurants. There were a few restaurants we went to that only accepted cash. And then temples, you have to have like a few coins, I think. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but you needed cash for temples. And if you really don't want to get any, it's fine. Like you can probably avoid it, but I would just do a little bit of research on the restaurants that you're visiting and make sure that they're not cash only. Okay, and then I want to talk about restrooms, which is really random, but obviously in Japan they have bidets and like super fancy bathrooms, and there's like a million buttons and it can be confusing, So I just recommend Googling what the flush button looks like, which is something I did before I went, and then like finding it before you actually go to the bathroom so it's not like awkward. I know that's like a weird tip, but it was helpful for me. And then for trains, like for bathrooms on trains, they didn't have soap in them, so I just recommend having hand sanitizer. And then the rest of these are just kind of like random tips that cover various topics, just things I thought of or things that are kind of common, but I feel like I want to include them in these videos just in case you're not aware of them. Okay, the first one is don't eat while you walk. You probably heard this, but it's considered rude to eat while you're walking down the street. So if you get food from like 7-Eleven or a cafe or something, just stand there in one spot and eat it, or you can, some 7-Elevens even have like little dining areas that you can sit at, but a lot of them don't. But just don't like walk around with your food while you're eating it. And then in Japan, there's not a lot of trash cans around, and that is one of the ways that they keep the country so clean is by not having garbage cans everywhere where garbage is just gonna like blow out onto the street. You'd think it would be the opposite, where not having a garbage can means that people are just throwing their garbage everywhere. But yeah, somehow it works out in their favor, but make sure you have like a plastic bag with you in like your purse or your backpack or whatever just to throw your trash in, because there were several times where I was eating onigiri and I had like a little soy sauce, and I just like that would be really messy if I had to hold on to that. So luckily I had a bag with me. Yeah, it's definitely just something that you want to think about because it's very inconvenient when you don't have anywhere to throw your garbage and you are eating something. I did a lot of shopping while I was in Japan, and I feel like this is something that you will probably want to do even if you're not a big shopper. There's just so much good stuff there, and there's so many good stores, and I don't know, there's just something about shopping in Japan where you're probably going to want to do it, so I recommend leaving enough room in your luggage to bring home souvenirs. Or something else you can consider doing is you pack a duffel bag in your checked bag, so it's like small and takes up like no room, and then you can put all of your souvenirs in there and use it as your carry-on on the plane, and then check all your clothes or whatever. Or even if you have room, you can fit it in like your personal item or something, but I'm not really sure if you will. But I think it benefits you on a lot of airlines to pay for that in advance, so I would definitely look that up. Or of course you could just buy a bag and then bring it home, like something to like put more stuff in. Another thing about walking around the streets, a lot of people there, I think I only saw one person do this the entire time, which is crossing the street at like a crosswalk before the walk light changes. And definitely in the US, this is like very common to just cross the street wherever, jaywalking or crossing whenever it's clear and not necessarily waiting for the lights to change. But I think in Japan it's kind of frowned upon to do that. Usually even if there's no one around, people will wait until the walk light changes. I think a lot of people don't actually know this because I've seen a lot of influencers and stuff going to Japan, and then it seems like they're not aware of this, but a lot of women in Japan dress more conservatively, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's like taboo, but it's not good, I guess, to like show your shoulders or to wear things that are super revealing. So I think also crop tops or like really tight tops. Just try to dress more conservatively if you're visiting. I think it's okay to wear like skirts that are shorter. I don't really know why, but I think that's okay, but just be mindful of showing your shoulders or like too much cleavage. And for men, I don't really know what is like considered taboo for that. I just looked up like for females. And then this is another random thing that just kind of goes along with any international travel, and that is just make sure you have a credit card that is accepted in a lot of places and doesn't have foreign transaction fees. That's really obvious, but some people might not think about it. If you have any good recommendations for good travel cards, leave them below because I am on the lookout for a new credit card for travel specifically. And for any popular tourist attractions, just consider booking it in advance because it might sell out. But then I wouldn't recommend doing it too far in advance so you can't see the weather because that can ruin your plans as well, and then you might end up just wasting your money. Maybe a few days before is probably the best option, depending on what you're doing. Obviously, if something gets really crowded, then I recommend just booking it. Like Team Labs, I think you should book that further in advance because the weather doesn't really matter. But something like Disneyland, I don't know that I would book it super far in advance unless it's like a really busy time of year. Or going into like Skytree or Tokyo Tower, something like that where you need it to be clear skies. I know you do get a discount if you book in advance, like not just advanced, but you have to book the previous day to get a discount. But I don't know, just do your research. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is very well known, but just be aware that if you are at a hotel or going inside anybody's like house, you have to take your shoes off at the door and change into slippers that they provide you, which I know a lot of people know this, but I just wanted to mention it. Yeah, and I think those are all of my tips. I'm sure I have more, but I can't really think of them right now, so if you have any more tips that I didn't mention, leave them below. And thank you for watching this video, and please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next one.